Ramadan guy for the Heisman, you cowards.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Radford! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail, Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP,
what up?
Your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the Ohio State-Michigan football rivalry. Thanks for subscribing wherever you're listening right now. Be sure to follow on social media at RivalPod and RivalPod.com. We'll break the ice with a little bit of a wheel route. Lots to get to in today's episode. Did Ohio State enjoy their bye week after that grueling MAC schedule?
You know what? I hope they did, because I'm ready for football to be back.
What game do you have circled this weekend that is not your team? Who? You know what?
Say what you're going to say.
Before the season, I never would have thought that this was the one I would circle. Say what you're going to say,
because I think it's the same as mine.
Is it a Friday night game?
It sure as heck is.
Nebraska, Illinois?
Give me two top 25 teams. Let's go.
I don't know.
Is it Nebraska's 22 and Illinois is 24 now?
24, 25, yeah. I mean, number one, these Friday night games are usually just trash. Last week was okay. Last week was all right. Yeah. But Illinois, Nebraska, especially because, for this podcast, you guys have Nebraska coming up later in October. Michigan's got Illinois later in October. And I think before the season, and I know Nebraska had the Dylan Raiola, he could be really good. I don't think either of our teams were circling those games and going, hey, we might want to pay attention.
But we had a conversation literally last week about Nebraska where we were looking at the schedule because we're planning out games that we're going to be able to go to. And I think it's Michigan State is the weekend that Ohio State plays Nebraska at home. And originally going into the season, we're credentialed for that game at Michigan together. And we were just going to plan on going down there. And we had to have the conversation about, do we pivot now?
Well, because
we're looking at Nebraska's schedule going that
Nebraska might be undefeated.
They're going to be undefeated coming into the shoe.
So Friday night should be a lot of fun. I believe the game is in Lincoln. Nebraska kind of out of nowhere. Illinois definitely out of nowhere.
Oh, for sure. And they won't. I don't think Illinois will stay there.
Well, Friday's going to tell us a lot.
Yeah.
Friday will tell you a lot because these are two good football teams, definitely above that. I mean, they're top 25 teams, right? These are two good football teams. And I think particularly if you're Michigan, you're kind of looking down your schedule going, some of these games that I assumed Illinois was not going to be a problem. I mean,
are a problem.
There's depending on what happens Friday, there is a world where Illinois is ranked ahead of Michigan and Michigan's going on the road in mid-October. That is a very realistic world right now. So, but that'll be a lot of fun. I'm very curious to see what Nebraska looks like against a team like Illinois, who has been very sound defensively. And also on the flip side, what Illinois looks like against a Nebraska team that has been very sound across the board.
See, I'm excited for that game as well, mostly because it's going to be one of the few games we get to watch. We're going to be on the road on Saturday,
full day
traveling. So I'm not going to be able to watch the Ohio State game. I'll be able to listen to it, thankfully, for at least a little bit. But I won't be able to finish it. Rutgers plays at Virginia Tech.
Nobody cares.
At 3:30. This guy right here cares. At 3:30. So can't watch that. I want to see Dylan Raiola because I haven't really had a chance to sit down and really. I've seen highlights.
Yeah.
But to take in a full game because outside of Oregon, that's the next game for me that I'm kind of circling, going, all right, this is the next guy that Ohio State's got to somewhat worry about.
Well, and I think Friday night will tell you, not that Illinois is on the level of Ohio State, but it will be interesting to see what he looks like against a pretty good Illinois defense. So lots to enjoy about that on Friday night. A nice slate of games on Saturday as well. You mentioned traveling for Michigan USC. That's a shameless plug for @RivalPod on social media.
Yeah, Instagram going to be flooded.
You'll be down on the field getting some photos. I'll be up top. We'll be able to take in the atmosphere, share that with you. It's going to be a good time. So make sure you're following there. Let's start though, before we get to Michigan USC, let's start with just again another grueling piece of Ohio State's schedule as
I don't think
Marshall.
you should talk when you barely escape with Arkansas State.
Okay.
Let's talk about a week.
I figured the box score hopper would make an appearance, and we are 4.5 minutes into the episode, and there we are.
We will talk about that
Marshall,
game.
though. Let's start with Marshall. Ohio State is favored by, I think, 40.5.
It is 39.5.
Okay.
Is what it is.
Marshall's not going to threaten. So, what do you want to see in this game from Ohio State?
I want to say, pretty simple. Keep it healthy. I don't want to see any unnecessary risks. You're only a couple weeks away from Oregon, and so
it's coming up fast.
At this point, stay healthy. It's one of those things. I mean, Ohio State in their first 2 games have put up over 50 points. It was easy for me to look at this and go, yeah, that's another 50-point blowout win. No problem. And it will be. It will be a massive blowout. I did see that Marshall, they're also coming off a bye, so they've had a little bit more time to prepare, maybe get healthy.
Good. I'm sure that
make a difference. Their last game against Virginia Tech, they lost like 31-14. They gave up over 200 yards on the ground to Virginia Tech. Ohio State's running back core significantly better than whatever you think Virginia Tech's looks like. And if they were able to get 200 yards, I expect the same story they had against Western Michigan. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, both I expect to have big days. Wouldn't surprise me to see James Peoples get in, get some reps. Wouldn't surprise me if maybe this is the game where we see Aaron Noland for the first time, to be honest. You've seen
brother. You might see some med student from
honestly,
the crowd.
If I'm close enough to the field, they might pick me out of the crowd if I throw some pads on.
Here's what gets me is that this is a big noon kickoff.
I saw that. They announced it and they were like, get pumped up. And I'm like, it is the thundering.
I understand from a big noon perspective, like you want to get to Columbus, you want to get to NR, like you want to be in the big the big teams in their big games. This ain't it.
No, this is
and I will grant you Ohio State's home schedule this year. You've got terrible.
You're at Michigan State next week. Then I think you've got Iowa the week after.
And that's what I'm saying, though. It's like the home schedule is terrible, but you still have Iowa, you still have Nebraska. Like you'll get a chance to come to Columbus. Why would you come for Ohio State Marshall?
Those aren't. It wouldn't surprise me if Nebraska
they probably will be, but I'm saying you don't need to force it. Why are you here? That's my question.
Will be what everybody is saying to the Marshall football team, and then they'll go, they paid us, and it'll all make sense. Not much to say. It's going to be a blowout. I have Ohio State 49, Marshall 0. I have back-to-back shutouts for the Buckeye defense.
Give me the same, but give them a field goal.
I almost put that 49-3
because It feels foolish week after week. It's like, you guys don't analyze Ohio State. What do you want
Did you
me to
watch
analyze?
the Western Michigan? They had 700 yards.
And to be fair, it's a lot of what the early season was for Michigan last year, where we would come in and we'd spend a lot of time talking about Ohio State preparing for Notre Dame and games like that. And then it'd be like, well, you didn't spend much time on Michigan. Yeah, because it's Bowling Green.
Although,
no,
that Bowling Green game...
Yeah, things worked out. Things worked out, buddy.
Sure.
I don't see Marshall being much of a threat here. And I think you're right. You want to get guys for Will Howard. You've now had 3. This will be the 3rd ramp up game.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense in which, yes, you want as many live reps for him as possible, but it's also a guy who's played a lot of college football.
And it's the downside of these kind of games, these schedules where
correct.
You want him to go out there and stay in rhythm and stay warm and get adjusted.
Yep.
But you're not going to see it out of him.
Yeah.
So if you're going into this weekend and you're expecting a 300+ yard performance and whatever, I just don't
need
see
it.
You don't need it. Exactly. So I think you're going to get Quinshon and Henderson. They'll combine for 200 something yards. You'll get a mid 200 game from Will Howard. The Jeremiah Smith will show why he's Jeremiah Smith. I mean, it is what it is.
The downside of, and I said this for Michigan last year too, like the downside of this schedule is that the first real test that you guys are going to have, and you could make an argument that it's going to be Iowa, but I've also watched Iowa, lost to Iowa State. Not great when Troy was leading Iowa. I mean, they had a tight game against Troy. You could say Iowa, I guess, will be the first test, but you're looking at either Iowa or Oregon as being the first game. And I'm gonna take the little Hawkeye helmet. I'm gonna put it under the Wolverine head real quick here and say Oregon being the first real test of the season is not the first test that you want to see. That's the one downside to a schedule.
I mean,
like
outside of this past weekend, Oregon hasn't been crazy impressive this season.
But they're still winning and they're still Oregon.
I mean, you're not wrong, but also I'm not trying to discredit what they've done.
They have not come out with the firepower
but
you expect.
They have not looked like the Oregon that I think everybody hyped them up to be. Not saying that they can't get to that, but and not saying that when it comes to the Buckeyes traveling to Eugene for that game, that they're not going to be that. But right now, I'm looking at that and I'm going, well, you struggled in your first 2 games. This past weekend against Oregon State, I thought would be their kind of first hiccup. And they dominated them, so they're getting into that.
They won by 35, something like that, something crazy. So it feels like Oregon's hitting the stride. My point in all that though is as much as you like having kind of that ramp up, that is the one downside to that. And I don't know for Ohio State if you really needed that, because you want to get Will Howard familiar with the offense stuff, but this is still a guy who has played a lot of college football. It's different on the Michigan side, where Michigan would kill for the schedule they had last year to get some of this stuff
to be able to run a 2-quarterback system more
and figure
frequently.
out what this needs to look like.
Yeah,
regardless,
you nailed it right on the head. I think this is a game where Will Howard's leadership, not Marshall in particular, but looking forward to the Oregon game, his experience.
The tests are coming.
Yeah, his experience is going to be the difference maker, I think, when it comes to games like that. Whereas last year with McCord and all them, you wanted that because this was their first year starting.
Yeah.
This isn't Will Howard's first rodeo. You've got to be able to trust the seniority of your guy. And we'll obviously get to that when the time comes, but there's nothing to really discuss. Marshall's not a great football team, although their wide receiver had a nasty one-handed catch against Virginia Tech. Ain't going to matter because it's not Virginia Tech this week. Other than that, my friend Ethan is actually a graduate of Marshall. He's going to be at the game, and he's going to be very sad, and I can't wait to talk all the trash when I get in Ann Arbor.
I love that you just will throw out the most random names of people, like either, here's a friend of mine that did such and such, or this kid went to Mansfield High School or whatever.
Am I incorrect on any of it?
Here's the only other thing I'll say, and then I'm tired of talking about Ohio State. I was so bummed on the NFL side of things last night, not just because I'm getting dominated in my money league, but because I start Dalton Schultz at tight end.
Well, yeah,
but because Cade Stover.
Oh, let's go, baby.
Cade Stover had himself a couple nice plays
back
there.
To backers,
and
a sick catch.
I had my phone out, and you didn't end up texting me, but I literally took my phone and put it face down and slid it under a pillow because I'm like, I do not want to get a text from you about Cade Stover right now.
Didn't need to. I was texting our good friend Bill Montgomery because they were playing against his Bears, and I'm glad that the Houston Texans could hear me all the way from Mansfield, Ohio, shouting for it. So give him more playing time.
All right. Well, hey, we want to say a big thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction. And I wrote this read originally for Clemson. I'm going to change it a little bit.
Florida State.
Maybe you feel like Mike Norvell in Florida State. You know what you're doing isn't working and you need to get some help, but you're not quite sure where to go. Well, thankfully, unlike Florida State, our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction can help you with a successful project. Our friend Aaron and his team, they've been doing this a long time. They'll communicate openly and honestly with you and leave you wowed at the finished product, unlike Florida State. If you've got a home, church, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name. ElevatedIntegrity.com. Side note, how sad is Florida State right now?
Did you hear why they're cursed?
Why?
Because before the season started, and I know we say this is a garbage free, but it's just too funny to not mention. There was a guy before the very first game of the season that came out and said that if they lost to Boston College, that he would eat a piece of poop. And they lost, and people were trying to hold him accountable for it.
I can't.
And he wouldn't do it, obviously. And then now look at him. They're 0-3. And the comments underneath the section where he has to do it now, we are cursed because
I'm going to suggest to you that the reason why has nothing to do with that, and is DJU is a terrible quarterback. That's a big
there can be two
of that.
Truths.
Anyway, Florida State is amazingly hilarious, and they are now 0-3. They play Cal this week.
Won't matter.
Also want to say thanks because we are proud to be part of the Varsity Network this season. Varsity Network is powered by Learfield and a must-have for every college football fan. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. Search for your school, find tailored content, and be sure to search for the Rivalry Podcast in the Varsity Network app. It has been a lot of fun this year. When I go back and listen to the episodes, just kind of gauge, hey, okay, how's it going? What are the stats? All that. It is really fun being, first year being part of the Varsity Network, to see, in the trenches with John Jansen there, to see Alabama, to see, Husky Talk with Jed Fish, like to see all these big games in there, and then there's the rivalry just right in there with me. It's so awesome. Finally, you can support the Rivalry Podcast. We've got exclusive merch, Ohio State, Michigan. We've got stuff still available for pre-order. Shirts are absolutely gorgeous. Have now sold out at least once, if not twice. And so we've got a new batch coming in. Be sure to pre-order at rivalpod.com. You can read articles there. You can see the photo galleries. There's a lot of great stuff there. You can listen there as well. You can support in other ways. Rivalpod.com, and be sure to be checking that out, both rivalpod.com and rivalpod across social media for the game this weekend, as we'll both be in Ann Arbor for Michigan and USC. Let's talk Michigan, shall we?
Okay. Can I tell you my realization? I told you this before we started recording, and it hit me on Saturday. And I had never thought of this before, but it just seems
probably a reason for that, right? It just
seems like such a good comparison. Now, I want to preface it by saying this isn't me downplaying either of these guys, because I still love the Ohio State guy I'm about to mention because of what he did.
Can you just say whatever dumb thing you're going to say so we can
Donovan
move on?
Edwards is the Cardale Jones of Michigan football.
I don't know what that means.
What it means is
what does that
okay. What it means is that in program history, he's going to be loved forever because of what he did in a handful of games. Donovan Edwards' performance against Ohio State in the playoffs with Blake Corum being out, in the championship game, the run that he had, he's going to go down in Michigan Wolverine football history as a GOAT. Maybe not that Blake Corum will be the GOAT, but he will go down and people will love Donovan Edwards, the Don, for the rest of his life in Ann Arbor. But it's much like what you're seeing with Cardale Jones. Cardale Jones comes in as a third string, leads Ohio State to a championship, has a 3-game run that is just insane, just puts up numbers, is beloved by Ohio State fans. The next year, the expectations are massive. Cardale Jones is named the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes to lead the season. You look at Michigan, and everybody was so excited that Donovan Edwards comes back, and both of them are underperforming. Cardale Jones doesn't end up starting the rest of the year. Donovan Edwards shouldn't be starting, in my opinion, the rest of the year. And you're looking at both of their careers, and Cardale Jones is going to be beloved by Buckeye fans. I saw it at the Western Michigan game. He was on the sideline. People are chanting his name. He's actually going to be doing something with us here at the River not too long from now as a part of golf appreciation. He's going to be known and loved by Buckeye fans forever because of what he did. Donovan Edwards, same boat. But they just aren't the guys that you hand the keys to.
Yeah, I don't know that I disagree at first pass. I think Don has a lot wider body of work that it's been more than just a handful of games for him. So I don't think that comparison is quite fair, but I get what you're driving
at. But Cardale's impact was bigger than what Donovan's was.
That's how.
Quarterback's the most important position of the entire team.
They both won national championships.
He was a third string quarterback.
Okay, cool.
Donovan Edwards was not the sole reason.
What I'm saying though is like I get what you're driving.
The comparison is there.
I think there's some fairness to that, and we can start with that. The offense looks different when Kalel Mullings is on the field.
There's just no way as a Michigan guy you look at what you've seen Donovan Edwards be last season and this season compared to what you're seeing from Kalel Mullings, and you feel confident with Donovan Edwards being running back one.
And I think here's part of the thing. I think part of it for Michigan is it right now. It is difficult to even. I mean, Don is going to be listed on the depth chart as RB1. I'm not even so concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is why Kalel Mullings is not getting the lion's share of the carries. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you designate as what. I guess I do, because if he's getting the lion's share, I guess he's RB1.
He should be running back one.
But regardless, yeah, the offense looks different when Mullings is out there. Donovan just
The vision is better. The speed is there.
And there was even the first touchdown from Kalel on Saturday against Arkansas State as we get into that game. I said right away, like, this sounds like I'm dogging on Dono, but he probably goes down with the first contact. Mm-hmm. And Kalel breaks a tackle, maybe even breaks a second there, and gets into the end zone. That's just a different type of running than what we've seen from Donovan Edwards. Here's what I'd like to see with Don. I would like to see, and this goes into obviously a host of other issues, is I'd like to see him come in as the pass catching back. Like that's a strength of his. And I wish we used that better.
You have to have a quarterback that can get the ball to him instead of the other team.
The dink and dunk stuff is fine though. I feel like he's not being used to his strengths, which means that Kalel then isn't being used to his strengths either. I mean, and let's talk about quarterbacks because Davis Warren I've seen enough.
He threw a perfect game. He didn't throw a single incompletion the entire game.
He did not. Here's the deal with Davis Warren. And it's the same. If this sounds like the same thing I said about after the Texas game, it's because it is. And we'll get into coaching adjustments here in a second. Davis Warren, like at his best, when Davis Warren is at his best, he's fine. He's serviceable. At his best, he's perfectly fine.
What legitimate game film have you seen that's proven that?
What are you talking about? He is wildly
The man
inconsistent.
has 6 interceptions. That's not what I'd consider fine.
Use the brain God gave you. He is wildly inconsistent.
Are you looking in the mirror?
Listen. Goodness. You can tell you're an Ohio State fan.
Spew some garbage that'll try and convince people that Davis Warren is a serviceable quarterback.
No, I won't. I'm saying when he's operating at his best, his ceiling is serviceable. His worst is absolute disaster. And continuing to trot him out there as a quarterback, as the starting quarterback at Michigan, is bordering on malpractice at this point. I'm not sure what else. My mind is kind of blown because I think after Texas, I'm not sure what else you need to see to go, yeah, that's probably not him. Because again, there are at his best, meaning his ceiling, fine. Okay. The problem is that he is wildly inconsistent and his floor is incredibly low. And so I don't know how moving forward, if you're Michigan, I don't know how you possibly start Davis Warren again. The good news is that Moore has kind of half showed his cards a little bit and tried to do like, well, we'll see how they practice thing. But he basically suggested, yeah, Alex will probably be the guy who starts on Saturday. I don't know how you don't do that.
We hard disagree on if Davis Warren is a serviceable guy. To me, serviceable.
I'm not saying my guy.
Him being good is, or fair, whatever you want to call it,
his ceiling.
At his ceiling is still bad. To me, if you're going to say a quarterback is serviceable, you're looking at what Cade McNamara was for you a couple years ago. He's not going to win you the game. He's not going to lose you the game. He is just there, and he doesn't turn the ball over. A quarterback having 6 interceptions and throwing some of the worst passes I've ever seen since Brandon Whedon was in a Browns uniform is just not cutting it. I agree with you that he's bad. I agree that there needs to be a quarterback change. It just... I think I even brought it up last week. If that's the guy that they're going with, and I think, to your point, you said this last week, I think Tuttle has been the guy that they want to go with, but because of his injury, they haven't been able to.
He's just not healthy.
And so I think had the season started with him healthy, he would have been QB1. We wouldn't be having this discussion. But because he's not, it makes me worried if Alex Orji is considered that big of a gap between the two, that when you're going out and he's struggling. I mean, some awful passes against Arkansas State, a horrible game against Texas. What's going to cost you from going out there? And I think I've seen you talk about this, throwing an Alex Orji out there that at least gives you a threat on the ground as well. Run RPOs for the rest of the game if you have to. Do anything, because nobody is afraid of that. I even tweeted it out on Saturday. If I'm the Buckeyes, if I'm Davison Igmanosin, if I'm Denzel Burke, Lathan Ransom, Jordan Hancock, if I'm Caleb Downs, I'm salivating watching that game. I can't wait till the end of November. If that's going to be who's throwing the ball up all day, absolutely.
But that's dumb because that's not who's going to be the quarterback moving forward.
Well, and it shouldn't be, but I'm also not intimidated by Alex Orji then either. And so I think if you're Michigan, I mean, if you go out there and trot out Davis Warren again, you're getting blown out.
And that's what I'm saying is Sherrone Moore has suggested that it's likely to be Alex Orji, and I don't know how.
Although Tuttle was in uniform this past weekend.
So here's the deal with Jack Tuttle. I played my cards face down, face up, whatever the good way is, where you know what I'm trying to do. Where I'd love for Tuttle to be the quarterback moving forward. Health is obviously the number one issue why he's not. But yeah, he was questionable for Texas, didn't get in. Was questionable for Arkansas State, did not end up getting into the game. So my hope was that Arkansas State, you would see Tuttle at least get some drives or something. Yeah. The fact that he didn't tells me that while he may be available for USC, he's certainly not going to start.
Yeah.
And my hope was kind of, hey, Arkansas State gives you a few drives to kind of get going, and you go, okay, this week of practice, you're the guy. That's not going to happen.
No.
That's not going to happen. Now, by the time you get to October, November, who's to say? Depends on what Orji looks like, depends on Tuttle's health, depends on a lot of different factors, right? Depends on if you win this game, depends on if you... Lots of stuff can still happen. So that's where Jack Tuttle's at. So don't hear me pivoting, being like, wait, you were saying Jack Tuttle last week. Now you're on the Alex Orji bandwagon. No, I'm still on the Tuttle bandwagon. I'm saying
if Tuttle was healthy,
being reasonable, if he's not starting and your two options are Davis Warren or Alex Orji, here's what Alex Orji does well. Alex Orji forces defenses to hesitate. You saw it from the second he came into the game. Yeah, there's plenty of stuff he needs to clean up and be better at. Absolutely. You are bringing him in, and that's exactly what I said last week, was if you have to run RPO every single snap, do it. Because here's what happened. The second he gets back there, even if it's a dink and dunk type pass, you still have to account for it. And there's that hesitation of, is he going or is he handing it off?
See, and I'm running a dual running back system. I'm having Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards in the background with Alex Orji, and you're not going to know which one of the three is going to keep it. I'm running RPOs the entire
and you
time.
Again, it's Arkansas State, but you saw success with it from the second he came in. The offense looked like it clicked more. Why? Because guys have to hesitate and account for it. I don't care if you're Arkansas State or Ohio State. You have to account for his athleticism. Again, granted, 2023 is not 2024. Orji came in for a couple of design runs in the Ohio State game. He did the same thing in the Rose Bowl. I'm blanking if he did in the national title or not, but he came in and he had one really nice run against, like, the athleticism is not the problem.
Yeah.
Okay? As far as throwing the ball,
don't do it. Just simply.
Well, I wouldn't even say don't do it, but you be smart in the play calls that you're making, right? I love the fact that on the second drive, and he missed him. I love the fact that the first play of the second drive for Orji, they said, drop back and launch it. I love the fact they did it. I think Frederick Moore was a little slow on it. I don't think that's on the quarterback. But again, that's the sort of thing you're going to have to do it. If you've got USC coming in on Saturday, which fun fact you do, you're going to have to be able to try stuff. And so once again, I feel like I'm beating the dead horse after Texas. If the knock on Alex Orji was, well, he's not trustworthy with the ball because he's not accurate, I come with terrible news about Davis Warren, and I am begging you to stop putting that man on the field.
This was one of those games where you walked into it after that bad taste in your mouth from Texas, and you wanted to see some improvement on offense. And I feel like you did. You saw a little bit with Orji, but as an overall whole, only putting up 28 can't feel super great. You got the job done. It's scoreboard's 28-18. It was 28-10. They scored in the last couple seconds.
And,
it didn't really.
You could also at that point argue it was 28-3 because Michigan starts rotating second, third, fourth string guys in.
Yeah,
I'm not concerned about what the scoreboard looked like. Michigan was in control of that game. Here's the good stuff. Okay, here's the good stuff because I've got just notes of all the bad stuff.
Is that page 4 of your 600-page manifesto, or
too soon?
Never too soon.
Here's the good stuff. Michigan's running game ran for over 300 yards. Arkansas State's a terrible rush defense or a terrible run defense. Michigan needed to get the running game right. Okay, the whole week after Texas was, this is a get right game. Running game got right. Okay. Now the key is you have to keep that going, but you've also got to get yourself there first. So Khalil Mullings needs to be getting lion's share of the running of the rushing game. I'm not sure that he will. I don't know that the coaching adjustments that are necessary are being made. That applies to quarterback, right? What more you need to see from Warren to keep putting him out there, I don't know. Quarterback is an issue. the running back rotation. The fact that Evan Link keeps getting trotted out there on offensive line. If there's go back and watch a replay. Do the like Big Ten, do like the Big Ten and 60 thing where they cut out the commercials and it's just like play. Anytime Michigan has a negative offensive play, look and see if you can circle 71 on the offensive line. He's nearby almost every time.
I just picture you with that. It's that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where there's the chalkboard and it's you pointing out
just
him.
Evan Link all over the place.
Just being circled and you just pointing at it.
Yeah. So, but again, run game did well. I thought the Michigan defense did adjust well. The opening drive was concerning to me.
Yeah.
But the defense, again, I'm not.
Back-to-back weeks, the opponents missed the opening drive field goal.
Yeah, that's nice. Which I'm going to get to that in a second here because I've got some thoughts on that. But I thought the defense did a good job. Again, I'm not concerned about, the scoreboard. The game was 28-3 and well in hand. I'm not worried about it. Here's what I am worried about on the defensive side of the ball is Michigan's got some of these like old, like, I don't know, like these old Don Brown ghosts starting to pop up. Things like just miscommunication, missed assignments, lack of tackling, like basic fundamental things that Michigan defense for the last, let's say, 2021, the last 3-4 years has not been an issue. Tackling in space is a problem. Bad news. You've got a guy named Zachariah Branch about to come into your house on Saturday. That man is fast. If you have a chance to tackle him and you don't, you will get absolutely blown to smithereens. The other thing for Michigan that's popping up is the penalty issue is suddenly a thing for Michigan. Michigan allowed 2 drives to continue because they hit a guy late out of bounds on that opening drive. Yeah. Which again, it's like, well, that's on it is on the defense because you hit a man late out of bounds. Okay. Yeah. You did your job and then you didn't. And even one of not the very last one, but the score that made it 28-10, that drive ended, but you threw the quarterback down. What are you thinking? There feels like there's a lack of fundamentals and a lack of discipline that's going to crop up in big games. If you want to beat the USCs and the Oregons and the Ohio States, Illinois for that matter, if you want to win those games,
I would not throw Illinois in with Oregon. They are 24th, my guy.
They're in there though. But if you want to win games against teams not named Northwestern, you're going to have to clean this stuff up because this is how you will lose football games.
Well, and going back to the defensive penalties, I don't think they called it.
And then there's beating yourself.
Well, and I don't think they called it last week, but it should have been a penalty. Was towards the end of that Texas game. I think it was Quinn Ewers had thrown a pass or something, or he had given himself up. And a guy from the defensive line came in
on the nail down.
I don't think it was like an intentional dirty hit, but if you're going by the rules, it still was contact with the defense.
That one I'm not really that worried about because
I don't think they called it.
The nature of that play was, to be honest, I'm still not entirely sure what happened on that play. I don't know why Quinn went down, but regardless, it's when you are at a place where basic things are becoming difficult for you, that's a problem. Like, what are the things you can control as a football team? Sound tackling. You can control that. You can't control, Miller Moss coming in, swinging the ball around. Okay. You can control, I can make this tackle. Okay. Sound fundamental tackling. I can not headbutt a man out of bounds.
Speak for yourself.
G. Scott Jr. Those are things you can control. Michigan last year, one of the reasons why they were so good, so many things, but one of the big reasons is discipline. This was I don't know where they ended up ranking as far as the least penalized teams. This team did not take penalties last year. Deep team, veteran team, experienced team, disciplined team, all the things that this year's team is not. So when you look at, let's actually get to USC. When you look at a team like USC, I mean, what do I expect on the Michigan side of the ball? I mean, I don't know. And that's the concerning thing. That's the concern. So that's my analysis. My analysis is I don't know. Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you so much. Very important podcast. So let's just get right to it. What's your prediction?
I think USC is probably going to win. This is
going against them. I don't think you've ever.
So I was thinking about this. It has been, I think it's probably been 2 years. It's probably been 2 full seasons since I made a selection on here that was not. Who
was the last time that you had Michigan losing?
I couldn't even tell you.
Because it has to have been over 3 years ago.
I couldn't even tell you. It's been a while. I'll put it that way. It's been a while.
Wow.
But because the uncertainty at this stage in the season, because now we're 3 games in, and now we're trotting out a new starting quarterbacks. Again, I'll leave the horse alone. Okay, the horse is deceased.
The Trojan horse.
The Trojan horse is deceased. I'll leave it alone. But you're starting a new quarterback. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Alex. I know some good things that I expect. I think it will open up the run game. I think it will open up the offense a little bit. But also, there's some big question marks because you are going to have to throw the ball. You are going to have to get creative. I'm not sure the play calling can keep up with that. I am concerned, not about the talent on defense, but I am concerned about fundamentals, like sound tackling. You get a guy in space. Can you make the tackle? I'm concerned about discipline. Can you keep from jumping off sides in a critical moment? I don't know. The only thing I know is Dominic Zveda Bing, Zveda Boom.
I hate when you say that.
Is going to be a factor, and that's great. He didn't really get the revenge tour thing I was hoping for this past weekend. I don't think he kicked a field goal last week.
Wow. So what's your final score, though?
Yeah, I'm going to take USC 27-17.
Shut your mouth.
Did you have the same thing?
The exact same thing. Read it right there.
Yeah, I read it.
USC 27, Michigan 17.
Because again, this is USC, I don't think USC is at the same caliber as Texas. And Texas, by the way, just went to number 1. And I wish that made me feel better about Michigan's performance, but it doesn't.
What's crazy about Texas, real quick, is that Quinn goes out for that game for a little bit. And then Arch Manning gets in there.
It's unfair.
And it's just dominant.
It's unfair.
And in my first thought, for just a brief second, I thought, if you're Texas, do you have to start Manning?
No.
Is that even a debate?
No, it's not. It's not a debate. It's not. It's yours team, and some teams are just spoiled, filthy rich.
Yep, man.
What I would give to get Alan Bowman back on this football team right now.
Or even Cade McNamara, to be honest. They officially do not. They officially do not have the worst offense in the nation. We can stop saying it. Michigan might have taken that.
We good, dog. Yeah, so while USC is not at the caliber of Texas, this is still a team that looks a lot like Texas.
In my score, I do think it'll be a little bit closer towards the end. I mean, 10 points isn't that drastic, but I do think it's going to be one of those things where, because Michigan's at home, and I hope that this is it because I really want to watch a good game. Yeah. I hope that Michigan can come out with some energy. I think the crowd's going to be ready to go. I think unless they get behind early, and I'm talking by double digits, I think it'll stay close. I think if Michigan turns the ball over and if USC gets up 10-14, I don't see it being as close as the score I have. But I think it wouldn't surprise me if Michigan had the lead at halftime. I do not hold that. I do not hold only because I
much
think
confidence in that.
This feels like a game where maybe Donovan Edwards, maybe Khalil Williams goes out and keeps you guys in it. I have zero faith in any of your quarterbacks to do this.
And that's what.
And I think the defense is still.
The defense is still good. It's still a good defense.
It's what you said. I think the defense is still good enough to keep you in games. I don't think USC's offense is to the level of what you saw against Texas.
No, but I'll tell you what, though. It's not to the Texas level, but it's still really good. I mean, I keep wanting to call him Meek Mill. It's Miller Moss.
Stop.
No, I did. I had to write down Miller Moss because I keep trying to call him Meek Mill. Maybe that's a nickname. I don't know. Miller Moss is a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
They've got a really good offense. And to USC's credit, their defense is a lot better than it was last year. I still don't think that they're not a phenomenal defense, but it's a good defense. Let me put it this way.
Fine enough to handle the Michigan offense at its current state.
USC is, I'm going to ignore you. USC is a team that before the season I said, that's a pretender. There's not much there. This is a contender. This is a good football team. This is I think they are ranked 11th in the AP poll this week. So
now they're only 5.5 point favorites.
So a de facto top 10 team. And here's what I'll say for Michigan. Like beyond all the, I'd like to see this. I'm complaining about that. Here's what I want. Here's where Michigan sits. Michigan gets to decide on Saturday what type of season they want to have. If you lose to USC, then here's what that tells me. That tells me that this is a team that will probably win the games they're supposed to and will lose the games that they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. You'll end up at 8-4. Cool. Not the season you wanted. You beat USC. Now you feel like your season is back on track. You feel like your goals are still ahead of you. You've still got a steep hill to climb, but you get to decide how much fun we have this season. A bounce back win is not beating Arkansas State. A bounce back win from what we saw against Texas is beating a fringe top 10 USC team.
Mm-hmm.
They have the talent to do it. They have the opportunity to do it. I just think there's too many X factors for me to, in good faith, pick Michigan without feeling like
I
a
don't
homer.
think Michigan's got it figured out enough yet to pull this game off.
Either.
I think the crowd's got to be in it. I think if they get behind, it's going to suck the crowd right out.
By the way,
think the running game's got to get going. That's not going to happen.
The stripe out is the first time they've ever done it. The stripe out's going to look cool. You can wear neon green for all I care. Show up and be loud and win a dang football game.
Or don't. I would also enjoy that.
You got anything else on Michigan? I feel like, and I can hear the I'll say this last thing. I can hear the Michigan contingent of this podcast that listens to the podcast being like, well, you're being too harsh on them. I don't think so. I think this is I think this is very realistic. I think there's plenty of good things to expect from Alex Orji. There's also a ton of questions. There's a lot of good things I see on defense. There's also a ton of questions. I see some good things from the coaching staff. I also have, and I've defended Sharon Moore. He's also 3 games into his head coaching career, but I have questions about his ability to adjust. I've tried to kind of fight that for a while, and it kept getting brought up by other folks. I went, you know what? There's something to this. You got to be able to adjust.
Well, and here's the nature of it.
There's too many questions on a team that doesn't have time to wait around and figure it out. You have got your season. What kind of season you have? Your season hinges on USC at 3:30 on Saturday. If you win it, awesome. Your goals remain in front of you. You've got confidence. You now beat a really, really good football team. That doesn't mean that you will win the Big Ten. Doesn't mean that you'll make the playoff. But from the beginning, this whole thing was you have to split Texas, USC, Oregon, Ohio State. Okay. If you lose the first 2, not that you can't beat Oregon or Ohio State, but if you lost the first 2,
you ain't going to win the other 2.
It tells you what trajectory you're on, which is why I'd say you're probably unlikely to win those next 2. You beat USC, it's back on target.
Well, and you're talking about people saying you're being too harsh for Michigan. And,
I call it like I see it, though.
Well, and to that, I just want to say that's what makes Ohio State and Michigan. There are a few programs where that's just the expectation, and if you can't deal with it, you're not built for it.
The bar is high. The bar is high every year.
And Moore knew that when he took the job. Ryan Day took that when he took over the job at Ohio State. These are the expectations. You're hearing coming into this season, you're looking at Ryan Day, who consistently has Ohio State in the top of the rankings, but he loses to Michigan 3 years in a row. He's not winning championships. He's not winning a playoff game. And now these things are being brought up. Would a large majority of
Kirk
other programs
is the perfect example.
Yeah, I mean,
but Ryan Day is not coaching Iowa. He's coaching Ohio State.
And that's the difference. There are a few programs
Sharon
like
Moore's
that.
not coaching Nebraska. He's coaching Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And so
comes with the territory.
For the record, I think Sharon Moore is going to be a fine coach. I think he's going to be a really good coach. There's got to be there is both grace for the situation that he's in, and also the bar is high because this is where you're coaching. Mm-hmm. You're coaching at Michigan. So Michigan, here's the deal. End of the day, Michigan gets to decide what kind of season they want. They get 60 minutes on Saturday to decide what kind of season are we going to have. I don't, as much as I obviously want to see them pull the upset.
It's going to be a really awkward car ride home if they lose.
No, because I'll say the same things I'm saying right now.
What games are on that night? Because we'll have to have one of those. Because Rutgers, Virginia Tech will be at 3:30.
So let's look at Rutgers to the Rose Bowl. This is where we track how likely it is that Rutgers could actually go to the Rose Bowl.
Baby.
Maybe not even how likely, just the fact that hey, they're still undefeated.
Right now, it's still possible.
Okay.
They were also on a bye week this past week. They're playing at Virginia Tech. At 3:30.
Okay.
They are currently 4.5-point underdogs to the Hokies.
Which
is a bunch of hokey pokey. If you
please stop,
they're not. They're going to turn themselves around.
I hate that I know anybody on
Kyle Monangai for the Heisman. You cowards.
No.
Yes, absolutely. Big Ten rushing leader from last season. I called it before the season. You can check the receipts.
No one's checking the receipts for Rutgers prediction.
That this would be back-to-back Big Ten rushing for the entire season. Common on guy.
That's great. I will text you scores because you will be on the field in Ann Arbor taking pictures. Let's finish off with Stupid Genius. This is terrible.
We have not hit on a single
We've
one.
not even been close. You took Colorado State.
Which I thought would fix the jinx. I've always picked Colorado over anybody that they've played.
And I wasn't much better because I took Oregon State. So
yikes.
Do we know ball? It appears we do not.
We do not.
At least not when it comes to picking upset picks.
Don't let this podcast fool you.
Stupid Genius upset pick of the week.
I feel like you're going to have the same one as me.
Pretty easy. It's got to be at least a 5-point spread. You get it right, you get whatever the spread was, and we keep track, and we both have 0 through 3 weeks.
Easy to keep record of.
Give me BYU.
Who's BYU going?
BYU, Kansas State.
Okay, you didn't go with what I thought.
BYU 7-point dogs to Kansas State.
BYU's undefeated, 3-0.
Wildcats, I believe, ranked in the top 15.
I think you're right.
If not, they're in the top 20 for sure.
I think you're right.
But just had a big win over Arizona as well. But going into Utah, give me BYU. Why not?
My Stupid Genius pick, Georgia Tech over number 19 Louisville. Right now, Louisville's 10-point favorites.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't know Louisville was ranked.
Number 19 in the nation.
Yeah, I like Georgia Tech in that too. Why not?
I thought you were going to go with that. They're 10-point favorites. I'm trying to get a serviceable lead.
There weren't a ton of upset picks that I really liked this week.
I'm going to be honest with you. I knew that we would be on the road traveling for a majority of it, and so I didn't want to get depressed by looking at what games I'm going to miss by being on the road.
That's fair.
And so I already knew Ohio State was at noon. I would miss a majority of that. I knew Rutgers played at 3:30, and I would miss all of that. And so I just didn't want to get sad.
There's got to be like a Hawaii game on Peacock or something, right?
I didn't want to be sad.
Be sure to follow again this weekend in Ann Arbor, USC, Michigan at Rival Pod, Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now. Rivalpod.com. Get yourself a t-shirt. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening right now, whether it's through the Varsity Network app, Apple Pod, Spotify, whatever that looks like. And enjoy a good weekend of football. I hope that I get to.
I can't wait.
That'd be nice.
I'm going to enjoy every second of that whooping.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.